Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Humanized Podcast, where we explore the ideas, technologies, and people shaping the future of intelligent systems, digital trust, and human-centric infrastructure. I'm your host Vardhan, joined as always by AK, the creator of Contextual Compute, as I guess now everybody knows about that. And today we are joined by someone who sits at the intersection of AI, business, and community building. uh, Here we have Peter Chmeil. Peter has
Hello,
spent years
everyone.
building communities, understanding emerging technologies, and developing deep conviction around where AI and blockchain interest particularly sits today. He has a great knowledge about trust, autonomous systems, and the future of digital coordination. And before we dive into anything, would love to start with a quick intro from Peter himself. Peter, would love to have a quick intro from you.
Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Peter Chmeil, reaching you here from lovely Sayreville, New Jersey. Super excited to be on the podcast today with Anantha and Vardan. I've had the good pleasure of working closely with them in the past. Super excited by what they're doing, and happy to participate in this conversation around AI and how it's shaping everyone's lives. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to see you. So yeah, man, I would love to kick off this podcast with the first question itself as a bumper about AI itself. So in just the last 12 months, we have seen AI has evolved a lot. It has been evolving at an incredible pace for the past 1 year. From your perspective, what are the biggest shifts people are underestimating about how AI has changed over?
So great question. And I think we've really had a fundamental shift back earlier in this year, in late January, early February, where AI shifted from something that is your advisor to your doer. And this came out with the new models, with things like OpenClaw, with Claude Cowork. And now AI models, their capabilities have increased so much that not only can they just give you great advice and write your emails and summarize things, but now they have access to your files. Now they have access to connections, and they can actually control your browser. So now you can actually start delegating tasks to it and creating reusable skills that allow it to work on your behalf. So it's really gone from, hey, AI is giving me advice, to now AI is something I can delegate work to. And this shifts the whole way in which people can work. And I don't think people realize this. And most people are still using it the old way as a chatbot and as a replacement for Google. So as the capabilities have expanded, I feel like the majority of people haven't really caught up yet. Um, but those who have are just doing incredible things with what they're doing with coding, what they're doing with automating their workflows. It's really been incredible. What have you guys seen in this space, and what are your thoughts around AI moving from something you ask advice for to something that actually now does the work?
Yeah. So, Peter, I think this whole agentic movement has been great, right? So, for people who have been using AI as a chatbot and autocomplete tool, this is the moment of where AI can not just give you provide information, but execute on your behalf, and that's a big shift. But what I have seen, I think at least from my interactions, is one set of people who say AI will not change anything, right? So the people who say, look, there's another tool like everything else that we had before. And there is another set of people who say, look, AI is going to solve every problem and it's not just a tool. It'll just displace every human ability. And I think both are not true. AI is an exceptionally new tool that a new capability that like we haven't seen before, right? So it can do things. It's probably the highest level of computation capability that we have seen to date, and so it can do remarkable things. But obviously now and so people who embrace that and build new business models are the people who are going to take advantage of what it provides from a uh, similar to what I'm sure Peter you have seen around when uh, web came in, right? So when internet came in, the people who embrace the technology from a new business model standpoint were able to really move the needle. So developers who are working in that frame are are the ones who really are taking advantage of it. And the other one, which I think we'll talk a little bit later, is we believe, I think we see it quite a bit, is the forcing function is going to be trust. So
Correct.
Yeah.
how do we trust this thing? It's not about capability, right? So the new forcing function is no longer about functionality, right? We built the whole SaaS industry on functionality, and then that's getting eaten by the models. But then now the new thing is going to be around trust and context. What do you know about the situation? One is the new business models from uh, itself, and from a technology standpoint, it's going to be trust. Those are the two things we see as people who get a handle on it are the people who are moving this forward. But it is definitely uh, in my 40 years of being in this industry, this is definitely a watershed moment. So it just have these. This is an incredible
Yeah.
set of capabilities.
So so that's sort of interesting what you're saying about the trust. And it's very true. Like even in just my own AI journey, I've been reluctant to completely trust AI. I manage it like a junior intern. And so I find myself at the middle, giving it tasks to do, reviewing everything, iterating on that and improving it, but then sort of creating a feedback loop. So I continue to update skills. I continue to update these markdown files that I've created for like my company brain, uh, client brain, and background. So it always remains contextually up to date. Um, and I'm just starting to shift to that next phase of, all right, I don't want to be the one orchestrating and coordinating everything because now I've become the bottleneck. And so I want the AI to be able to, that triages my emails, that I don't just have to read the emails, but it can now start taking actions on some of those emails. And it can now fire off things. And so I've started a couple weeks ago building out a system where it will start queuing up things in tools like Linear, run scheduled task, queue up work to be done. Other scheduled task will check that and start then processing things. And then so I'm sort of the one setting up the system, and then I'm the one reviewing things at the end. And I'm starting to want to remove that um, me in the middle as being the one who has to orchestrate and delegate everything. And that's been a complete mind shift for me. Um, and building that trust and building out that system, and it's going to take a while, but that's I think that's the way people need to do that to get to the next level, to go beyond autocomplete, to go beyond the search engine that answers your questions, to now be that employee, that trusted worker that can do all the meaning. Like it's amazing how much sort of tedious, monotonous work goes into all the scheduling, coordinating, running
Mhm.
things that AI is just better at.
So are you saying, Peter, that we need to have AI agents which perform better than our kids? So listen to us a little bit more. So, so yeah, I
I
think.
know I can definitely say the AI is more agreeable. It tells me that I have a lot of good ideas. My kids, not so much. They don't say, "Oh, that's a really great idea, Dad." But
Yeah,
AI is so agreeable.
yeah. So yeah. So that's very very interesting. So you have been a builder for a long time, Peter. We have talked about this. Maybe the past, but what do you think is the most important thing builders are fundamentally misunderstanding about this moment? Anything that you want to shed light on, because you're a thinker and you're also a hands-on guy, right? Like when you go
Yeah.
to look at the
So
so
I think the thing people are missing is they're thinking AI is going to take over the work and it's going to reduce the need for that. And what typically happens in anything when the price of something goes down to zero, you get more of it. When
Yeah.
scribes went away because the printing press came out, we didn't have less books, we had more books because it created an explosion. And people's roles shifted from, no, I need to be a scribe who can work this pen on this parchment paper and copy the Bible 500 times, to, no, now I can become the author and I can become the creator. And so I think it's going to shift people's focus from being the task executor to the creator. Um, and the bottleneck is going to shift from, hey, can we do this, to should we do this? And is there a market for this? And is this what people really want?
yeah, that I think that's a very interesting insight, Pete. So you're saying, like, what most people are thinking, that AI will make us dumb. Maybe it'll make us more wise over time, right? Because it takes all the repetitive works away, and then we need to make all the judgment calls. So probably we are
Mm.
moving up the intelligence curve as opposed to just
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. You don't want to be doing that tedious, repetitive, monotonous work. You want to start doing higher level work with strategy. You want to be developing relationships. You want to be, you know, identifying new opportunities for your business, your personal and your business life. That's where that's how humans should be spending their time.
yeah. I think actually I think it was an ETH Denver. Maybe I was talking to an investor, I think, and he said, "Look, now our entire investment philosophy has changed. So they want to have teams where they ship code every night, and the whole thing is about product market fit and whether it is really useful or not." So, and you have been preaching this for a long time, Pete, right? It's not about the technology; it's about the product. But then now it's probably uh, it's what software engineering and product fit as opposed to really coding and all monotonous work, right? So just
Yeah. So
probably.
relating this back to, as someone who's been a coder who's then
Mhm.
done product management, so I can relate to both sides of it. Um, I think a lot of coders are like, oh, we don't need product managers now, or not clear what our role is. And I think a lot of product managers are like, oh, well, we don't need coders now. Where does our role fit? And I think a lot of them are sort of concerned that they're going to eat each other's lunch. And what I think is a better way to approach this is not to say, oh, I need to be specialized as a product manager who can write requirements and specs, even if I don't know how to code, or oh, I'm a coder, so I need to know how to architect and how to design things properly and make sure that this is going to scale and meet security. I think what we need now is people who are more generalist than specialist. And there's an opportunity for people who are generalist who can then understand what makes a good product and how to define it in a way that the AI can then build it, and then how to make sure that this is an architecture that can scale and we can harden and proof this out, and then analyze the outputs and do that user acceptance testing, that this is what customers want, and build those feedback loops in to continuously improve things. um, I think a lot of people think, oh, and I saw this with Agile too. Oh, just get in and start building things. And I found with trying to do my own vibe coding that if you leave too many assumptions, if you don't define things clearly and have a systems thinking mentality, that the AI will just make a lot of assumptions, and a lot of bad assumptions, and that you might not uncover them right away. So I think there's probably a lot of code right now that's going to like blow up in people's faces over the next few years, and create like major problems probably. Um, so I think what you're better off doing is writing really like AI can shorten the cycle, but it doesn't eliminate the need for defining clear requirements. Um, defining what done looks like and how you're going to test things. Um, and then going through steps of actually, verifying the code and not just pushing things into production. I think that's really risky right now to just take AI code and just push it right into production without any kind of review. Um, but it raises a bigger question: how do you prevent then humans becoming the bottleneck in that case?
Yeah, I think this is
Um,
where that's a very interesting question. That was going to be my next question, Pete. Right. So if this is an ongoing conversation, and this kind of ties back to what I mentioned about the forcing function, right? So obviously with AI, logic is going to work at machine speed, right? It's just going to do everything at machine speed. And unfortunately, today's the trust model in computation, human beings are the trust fabric, right? So we go and approve our email, we go make a decision on whether that what food needs to be ordered, whether the booking needs to be done, whether so we work at human speed. The code is going to work at machine speed, and this gap is just catastrophic, right? So just so you have one leak of your API key. Now you have million places where it's getting exposed, which we don't know
right.
where it's even exposed, right? So this gap between uh, logic running at machine speed and running at human speed is a foundational problem for autonomous agents, right? So and uh, that's got some deep rooted computational corrections that we need to do for it really to go there, because we don't have a seat now, right? So you're going to get cut out. Humans are getting cut out of the loop, and you are the trust layer for digital today. So now that
So,
poses a
so
very interesting problem. Yeah.
So what's the right organizational structure for a firm that's implementing AI agents? Like typically a human hierarchy in a company, like one person can typically really can't manage more than 50 people. Once you get above 50 people, you need to start adding layers of middle management. Um,
Mm.
are people going to implement the same structure where it's a human that's in charge of 5 AI agents, and once I get above 5 AI agents, I'm going to need another agent that manages those agents, and then I need another agent and they'll just replace the traditional hierarchy? Or do you think people will redesign things? Like look at what Jack Dorsey's doing over at Stripe. Like he's creating brand new roles and sort of experimenting with some new models there for
Yeah.
organizational structure.
Yeah, that obviously there is going to be some level of human involvement, but then if you make human authority as the however the number works as the uh, 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 authority layer for autonomous agents, you just are going to reduce the efficiency, right? So obviously you need to have people. So you need to have some kind of a computational authority layer. What I mean by that is you need to have some kind of a participant layer in the network itself. So which kind of Peter can or the person who's authorizing can themselves represent themselves in the network and using cryptography, and so you can authorize revoke so that your authorization is available as you at machine speed in the network, right? So that's where it otherwise you're going to slow down uh, autonomous agency completely, right? So what I'm saying is you need to have an existence in the network. For example, Peter needs to have a Peter in the network or who are authorizing it, so they're not uh, a participant layer in the network. And that's something blockchain with some addition of participant centricity can add, right? So the cryptographic existence of Peter, uh, along with some state management at that level, would kind of give you the authority layer which runs alongside that, right? So kind of the agents logs into Peter and takes the permission, as opposed to
Okay.
you authorizing everything. So that's that's I think where it's going to move, because you need to have some kind of an authority layer which is autonomous, which can be controlled by human beings, of course, right? You should be able to revoke, you should be able to enshrine conditions, you should be able to uh, but if authority is still going to happen at human speed, I think the efficiency of autonomous agents will come down. So and and
So
and
so I like where you're going with this. So and I'm thinking of other concepts. So you need authority as one layer. I think you also need an audit layer of like, what did it do? How did it make these decisions? What tools did it have access to, so that when things go off the rails, you can trace it back to something that's fixable, same way you would with a human. So I think you need that sort of auditability and that logging. And
Because
so authority,
agents need identity, right? So for example, the non-identified to identified agents are 1,000 to 1 today, right? Your bots everywhere. You just need to first, that's what you're talking about, audit layer, right? So I need to know what
yeah,
what agent did, so that we can, so one is authority, the second is identity, and the third one, which people talk about, is obviously it's getting more functional now, is about how do you have memory, right? Preferences and things of the nature, so that that's not safety, but it's a kind of convenience. But how do you institutionalize knowledge? This goes back to your question, right? If I have to have 100 people, I need to have knowledge. So how do I institutionalize knowledge, which what the agent learns? How do I propagate it to across the organization, so right kind of decisions
yeah.
can be made? So and so memory layer is a memory and context, and is what is going to be the new currency for programmers, right? That's what you're going to control. The models are going to still control capability, and so the entire moat is moving towards context and authority and safety, which is typically an application participant level capability, right? So the functionalities are eventually, I think it's, as you rightly said, when intelligence becomes cheap, authority, safety, and context becomes the forcing function, right? I think that's where it's going. So
And where does monitoring fit into all this? Because if you have, an AI agent, receptionist answering the phones, or an AI agent handling customer support issues, where do you put the guidelines in to monitor those when it's not just a handful of these agents, but it's, to your point, thousands of them?
yeah, so
And
you definitely need that authority layer. So you need to have a layer on which it exists, which can be revoked, changed. So let us go through a thought exercise, right? I've been thinking about this for a while. So assume that I'm part of an autonomous agentic network, and then that agentic network is, for whatever reason, purchasing medicine, shipping it to something which gives it to me,
okay,
right? Now, my doctor goes and says, you have an allergy for something, your medicine needs to get changed. Okay. How do I communicate to all the agents in the network? Now, this cannot be probabilistic. This has to be deterministic, right? So it's not, it's got to be a semantic layer. It's got to, so how do you know that, how do you change it in one place so that every agent downstream which accesses that has that information? Where- So,
so
where,
that's a different problem. That's the problem of them being determined, of agents being probabilistic. Because I could imagine that, like, oh, I'm going to write you a prescription for your allergies for this specific medicine, and the AI agent just says, oh, he needs an allergy med, and I'm going to pick a different allergy
yeah,
medication,
yeah, yeah.
and
So,
that's the wrong one. That's not the
yeah.
one the doctors did.
Yeah.
So
So there is this semantic layer need. So that's what you are kind of mentioning. In the semantic layer, you could have multiple things, Peter. The rules could be one thing, right? So the guardrails could be one thing, right? So don't spend, a silly example could be, you don't want to spend more than X dollars for an employee at this level when they travel, right? So I'm just
okay,
making this. So that could be a rule. Now, where do you institutionalize this rule, right? So that every agent downstream and across the boundaries follow this, right? So, or an agent could be risk score or don't use this data. So it doesn't matter what it is, those rules need to be enshrined somewhere. And the place for it to be enshrined is something like an part authority layer. Now, uh, how do you think you have been working in the blockchain AI space, intersection space for a while, Peter? So how do you think uh, blockchain can help AI in the safety narrative, or this narrative of audit and things like that? Is there a play? Because it clearly cryptography has got a play. Do you think blockchain adds some value here to kind of act as the trust layer for AI?
yeah, I've always thought, like, when AI really started taking off, 3, 4 years ago with the release of ChatGPT, of where's this sort of intersection of AI and Web3. And I think you're hitting upon it by saying the AI is the probabilistic one that's good at, you know, using incomplete information to make some decisions and classify things. But certain the blockchain is great for those deterministic things where you need a source of truth, where you need to track and audit things, where you need to give explicit permissions for who can access a wallet and what's the maximum spend in that wallet, through rules and smart contracts, where you can enforce regulatory and compliance issues as well, across regions, and across different individuals, to identify who is a accredited investor versus a non-accredited investor, to make a certain investment purchase. And so I think if you mix the two together, that's how they can really sort of balance each other.
Yeah, so the
And
functionality and probabilistic layer is AI, and the deterministic enforcement layer could be blockchain. Kind of an yeah,
yeah,
kind of a
the source of truth, the deterministic logic,
Mhm,
and and the audit and traceability of this.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so I think that's where those can all fit together pretty nicely.
Yeah. So are you working on any? So I hear a lot about this voice agents thing now, Peter. Are you hearing anything about voice agents? Any cool use cases that you have worked on, which the audience can draw inspiration to or try out?
Yeah, so it's not like, I mean, these AI voice agents have gotten so natural and stuff. So I am working with different companies. One of the AI startups I'm working with is a company called Nova Echo that has AI voice agents. I'm currently working with they've implemented hundreds of these agents across all types of use cases for people that are looking for an AI receptionist to answer the phone, to something that can do outbound calling, to giving an immediate reply. If someone goes to your website and says, "Hey, I'd like more information about your product or service," it can call them back immediately. And so that instead of you having to wait, 2, 3 hours for someone to respond or something going to voicemail, you get a response immediately. And and this sort of leads to the next thing of sort of like AI agency and services, because these things are available 24/7. The Their cost of using that versus an employee is so much less. They are they don't get sick, they don't take off, and you can train. They're more consistent probably than a human, because you train it on exactly how to handle certain things. um, and so I think for those kinds of tasks, like, AI is great for doing those kinds of customer support and sales things. Um, and I've been even kicking around ideas of like, oh, what if we could develop some AI voice agents for onboarding customers, new customers onto a software as a service platform, and using it for training purposes or to do pre-sales demos and things like that. Things where, like, oh, instead of me having to click, oh, let me book a call with a salesperson, and then have to wait, 2, 3 days to meet them. They find out I'm just a tire kicker and not really, interested. And by the time the meeting happens, I forgot why I was on that website in the first place. Like, hey, just talk to our AI agent. They'll give you a personalized demo, answer any questions you have, qualify you as a lead. Is this something you're looking to buy now or in 3 months? Um, Give you a much more contextual. And now the salesperson can meet with a qualified lead who's a motivated buyer, instead of, 10 calls that make no sense, to just reach the one person who is really a prospective buyer. Um, so I see lots of areas around that, um, with AI voice agents. And they really are, they really do sound human, and they're getting so much better at understanding the subtle cues of how interruptions work, and when someone just says versus like, no, I'm really interjecting and I'm asking, we need to interrupt and ask a question and things like that. So there's all these little subtle nuances that there's still room for improvement, but it's really gotten so much better. The other area, though, that I think is really interesting is, and I've had several people reach out to me in the last few months, and more recently started working with a company that does that helps companies appear in AI searches. So when you go to ChatGPT and you said, "Hey, who's the best, divorce attorney in Central New Jersey?" Like you want that lawyer to pop up at the top, or "Hey, where's a really good restaurant I could go that's a vegetarian down the Jersey Shore? I'll be near Seaside Heights." Like that, it comes up with really good recommendations, and you want yours to pop up there. And it's actually a very different algorithm and approach for SEO versus GEO. So appearing in a Google search versus a AI search is actually very different criteria, and it's um, there's actually huge advantages in GEO because people are back to trust. People sort of feel like the AI has done some homework and vetted this place, where they feel like Google is just providing them like a list and maybe who paid the most in terms of AdWords to appear near the top of the list. Um, and so, how about you guys? When you're searching for stuff for your personal life or business, are you trusting? Are you find yourself still going to Google, or is it more and more you're going to the AI search and using AI for those types of searches and recommendations?
More and more AI, man. So just
Yeah, same.
the easiest thing is we can speak to it and we can work in an interface which is human-like, right? So I think that's a given. So it's human beings are analog and unstructured. What I mean by that is we just need to be free form. So and so AI kind of uh, structures our thoughts well, so we can be free from, and then they kind of understands intents a little bit more than a search engine will do. So I think structured access to information, I think, is kind of dead. So I think we're going to get the
Mm,
unstructured model of AI will at the back end structure it, but then I think the interface of structured engagement with computation is just kind of going away, right? It's either it's voice or whether it's text. It really doesn't matter, right? I think uh, I think that, so, and that's good and bad, but then that's where it's heading, right? So so is it because when you write, you have to be very precise, right? So it just you can't,
yeah,
and so searches have got their own limitation, but it's also very precise. You have to express yourself in a way which is less ambiguous than when you do in a conversation or when you're in an unstructured form. So,
yeah.
but then it is so much more easier. So I don't think I don't go to Google uh, anymore. Just
Yeah, and people trust the results better.
yeah.
And a lot of people have reported, and I've seen some reports that like website traffic is down,
Hmm.
but the people that come from an AI search and land on your website are like
Hmm.
7 to 10 times more likely to buy your product or service
Yeah.
because they feel the conversation and the research they did on the AI
Hmm.
has already vetted that product or service, and now they're in buy mode.
So
Um,
are products there where people can drop an ad now to an AI search engine? Is that maybe I'm so do you think
yeah,
things
yeah.
like that have come up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you can check this out. This company I started working with is called Cited. The website is ucited.com. Um, and super impressive team. They launched back in January. They got the thing built in like under 4 months. Um, and are doing well. Already have a half a dozen companies, uh, have multiple agencies that provide SEO services that now can provide GEO services to their customers, and and actually that's sort of a good transition to the next topic of like the natural transition to I actually am not a big believer in AI tools. Um, Tools like Cited, I think, have a market for certain people, and even the AI voice agents. I feel like the average company and the average person really struggles to properly implement these tools and get adoption. I've seen this from reports of companies using, you know, tools that they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on to things that they're just paying, a $50 to $100 a month subscription in. And you see where there's a lot isn't getting good adoption and there isn't a big churn. And therefore these products are churning very quickly. Where I sort of see the opportunity, and I'm seeing a lot of indicators from other companies like Y Combinator and Sequoia, and who are always trying to think, two steps ahead. But I think the bigger opportunity is actually AI native services, where instead of building AI tools that are thin layers on top of ChatGPT or Claude or any of these models, build the services, but do it in a way that you could deliver the service as with outcome based pricing or fixed fee based pricing, and do it in a way that you're leveraging AI for all aspects of the business. You're using the AI tools to provide the service, but also for your marketing, for your finance and accounting, for your support and your sales. And by building an AI native business, you know, one employee can now, if you can 3 to 10x that employee's productivity, and you can now 3 to 10x their revenue per employee. So I've been actively looking and working with different subject matter experts in different areas, like legal, financial planning and analysis, HR, um, recruiting. What's another one? Bill collection, debt collection for companies, all these things that can just become now outcome services where people pay for the outcomes and say, yeah, I just want someone else to manage that for me. Go collect my money for me. Go handle this house closing for me. So instead of a, paralegal service that can only process 10 10 closings a week, now, like, using AI, you can process 50 closings a week with that same paralegal overseeing it. That's where I see the biggest opportunity, because what do they say, that the services typically are 5 to 6x times the amount of money people actually spend on the software. So if people are going to spend trillions on the software, they're going to spend 5 trillion on the services around them.
Interesting. So maybe that explains why I think Claude and ChatGPT started a services company recently. So.
Right, and good point. Right, they just got big investment from what was it, BlackRock? And who were some of the other companies? Was it Price Waterhouse or some others?
Definitely BlackRock, and so obviously services is where the action is going to be. At the end of the day, it's a technology which needs to drive to a business outcome. But then your point about agent native business outcomes is interesting, right? So I think that means you need to embed AI natively into the business process, so that you kind of reduce the cost in a way, or improve the value in a way that it's very significant, so that you can have high level of confidence in the outcome. So we tried this long time back in Accenture, Peter, when we were trying to do analytics systems. So we'll go to people and say, look, here is a predictive model which will reduce your churn to this extent, and then based on the churn that we reduce, obviously you get you based on the outcome you get paid. But then, as you rightly said, not all portions of the value chain we were able to automate that day, right? Because we didn't have AI, we didn't have tools. So I think we might have a better. And so it was very difficult to, as a vendor, to establish a base saying that I manage enough of the variables so that I'm confident of the outcome, right? So otherwise it just become.
So I've talked about this outcome-based pricing with a bunch of people, and they all raise that same concern. How do you determine what that price should be and how much of it is due to your service and the value you're adding. Another member of like the AI community that I run brought that up. He worked for a big um, uh, electronics manufacturing company, and he ran into these same issues where actually the vendors, the customers themselves said, we want outcome-based pricing, but then they themselves couldn't actually come up with what that model is. So it wasn't like they were trying to push it on the vendor, on their customers were trying to push it on them, but no one could come to an agreement on who's accountable for what.
I think
um
somehow that could be just not availability of data. I think it's got a lot higher chance of success now, right? For example, uh, it's more a question of the unknown as opposed to bad intent. What I mean by that is we just don't know how to evaluate it. But then AI with this modeling capabilities and many things getting automated may be able to. I think in the last 10, 15 years, we've automated a lot of things. A lot of inputs are also now measurable, right? So it's all digitized. So
yeah.
we'll be able to, and so, and we can build a model which kind of looks at all the variables and say, yeah, this got to be the pricing. And then, and in a reasonable sense. So, and that's definitely the way to go. But then so it'll again kind of circle back a little bit around trust and safety and whether you really believe in the model to do what it's saying it's doing. But then I definitely agree with you that AI native businesses are the way to go, right? So think of business models which really use AI, not try to use it like a calculator, right? Don't use it like a tool. Use it like something which kind of fundamentally can add value to what your business is. I think those are the kind of products which will have an impact. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I have a good question for you. Like, as we have talked a lot about opportunity, like this era is kind of the most opportunistic one for the people around. Either it's someone who is a developer, or either is someone like me who is not even a developer but can build a business around through AI itself, an agent through AI itself without even coding, vibe coding basically. So for builders watching this who want to capitalize on this AI wave, where do you think the biggest opportunities lie over the next 2 to 3 years?
so that's a really good question. I've been thinking a lot about like, again, like what people should be building. I'll circle back to like like hey, you've got to become the generalist and understand, have a systems thinking mindset of what goes into that specification and what's good architecture and combine those skills. um but like in terms of like tools, it's really hard. And so let me explain sort of my journey around this. When AI first came out, with the LLMs, I've been working in AI since like 2014. But when ChatGPT had that moment, I was like, all right, like you're not going to be able to build on top of this unless you have like a moat in terms of like some really unique data or really unique expertise. So, let's just say, oh, I'm a psychiatrist and I've got this certain approach that I follow, and I've written all these books that are my intellectual property, and therefore I could sell my method of psychiatry and expand out from, the 30 patients I see a week to, 3,000 patients, and sell my specific service. But I feel like the AI models have gotten so good and the data that they're trained on that they're picking up enough of that knowledge. And yes, maybe they don't have your specific one, but they're either stealing it and you know and putting it into their models anyway, by scraping the internet and pulling that information. And then they've gotten so good with the harnesses around them for how they process and verify and make decisions and research things that I don't know if that's a defensible mode anymore. Um, so I think the main thing isn't necessarily like, again, I feel expertise is going to zero. So, the cost of knowledge is going to zero. So I think the most important thing is to build skills around your ability to think, your ability to make judgment, and being adaptable, and staying curious. Stay on top of things. There are arbitrage opportunities that maybe you could take advantage of for a short time that won't last long time, but you can make a lot of money. Think about the people back when the iPhone came out that created flashlight apps and sold them for $1. Hey, I'll keep the flash on your camera on, so now you have a flashlight, because that wasn't in the initial iOS operating system. But within 6 months, a year later, it was. But I'm sure there's a couple people that made millions of dollars selling flashlight apps. Um, so there'll be those arbitrage opportunities. I'm not sure where the long term opportunities are. Um, it still might just be Nvidia selling chips and feeding the arms race, for
Yeah,
this.
I don't know. Over long term, you have taxes and death paid, so there's nothing left. So I think I would worry about over the longer term. But then I think you touched a nerve there, right? I think cost of expertise is going to zero. That's a scary thought, isn't it? It's just what I'm saying is,
Yeah, that
yeah,
doctor, that lawyer, that accountant, that
yeah. So,
PhD in physics,
so I,
everything that
so
he's
I,
learned in his
so
lifetime.
that's why
That
my bet, Peter, is the forcing function is not skill; it's going to be trust. So safety is the only
Mm.
forcing function going forward, right? So when cost of uh, so how, the person who says provides you a model which can be trusted more, assume that there are two models, is the one which I'm going to pick, right? So it's just uh, so trust and safety are going to be the forcing function, because skill has become, as you said, and it's gone to zero, right? Intelligence is available. So now, so the question is, everybody has got the same bright looking PowerPoint and website now. So I can't evaluate based on that. So, okay, can we evaluate through content? Maybe even not that. That's also now normalized. So what do you evaluate based on? So, on a lighter note, all the emails are brilliant now. Previously, I used to get emails which had broken English, and now every email from everybody is like Shakespearean, right? So precise, where the article needs to be used, use a the day before, where he A before, all that nice, perfect English. So, on a lighter note, I think AI has gotten people to write well. So
100%. 100%.
so
Every
so,
mail
so
goes through ChatGPT before sending out.
oh yeah.
I've been using Grammarly for the last 6 years, and it gives me a weekly update, and it tells me how many times like I left a period or left a comma out, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah. So, but then the point is, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. So for all the skills, Peter, I think the more I use the tool, uh, more costly is the recursion becoming. What I mean by that is, personally, I end up spending more time doing something with the AI than less time on drafting some conceptual documents, because it just like the what I call perfection trap, right? So you just keep it agrees to everything you say, so that's a problem. So sometimes it needs to disagree. That's the only way you will make progress, right? So and so as you rightly said, innovation, judgment, thinking, those are skills which probably is going to make the last 20% better, right? So basic knowledge will be available, but would it replace a doctor? I'm not sure, right? So I think
yeah,
so judgment is still involved, right? And I see that in uh, everything everything I do. It's a great uh, general purpose knowledge, which probably goes to zero. But I think real value is all in context and participant centric impact anyway, right? So I think you go to your doctor not because he's a better doctor. You go to him because he knows you better. I think that
Yeah,
portion is never going away. That's not a skill portion. That's a judgment, personalization, context portion, right? So even what medicine works for you may not work for me, may not work for Dan, right? Exactly same
Yeah.
clinical system symptoms, and so this whole two modes, right? One is obviously safety. The other mode is all about value, which is around participant context and judgment. And that's where the value always has been. So I don't think, but large language models are general purpose machines. So and so they're
yeah,
not going to, they don't know Pete. They know the symptoms Pete have. They're they're not the same. So they know the symptoms
right.
AKS. They're not the same. So I think that's where the mode, and that'll remind the more people who service that will. So things like judgment, innovation, context, personalization, right? So those things are not going away, right?
So so knowing someone, we were having this discussion the other day with some friends of mine from Founder Institute and one of the other startups I'm working with, AIFAQ, that's built a chatbot
yeah,
solution. And we were talking about that level of personalization, specifically around communities, and saying that, everyone's a member of these different communities. I have got my own AI community. I'm part of Founder Institute. I go to different tech meetups. I'm in, basketball and stuff with the kids. Um, but like, there's all these missed opportunities for members to connect with each other. And I feel like, how do you create better communities by using AI to have better matching engines? We were having the discussion, so that it's not just doing keyword search based on, my LinkedIn profile that doesn't really say that much about me, and that it has that deeper context. We've all met those people who are like great connectors. Like, you have a conversation with them and like, oh, I got to introduce you to so and so, because they're able to connect those dots of how what you're doing is similar to that person. Even if you're not, like, if you looked at your LinkedIn profiles, you would say that, where's the match between these two people? um, so how do you get to developing the right level of information, of structured and unstructured data, understanding those relationships to make those connections of like, hey, we just joined this, business professional network, and these are the five people you really need to reach out to. Or you just went to ETH Denver and you've got to randomly hope you run into like four or five good potential investors, or products or ideas or people. um, and it's more random than like, hey, there's 20,000 people at this convention. Here's the five people you really should talk to.
yeah. So I think Peter, I think this hits on a very important point and very close to my heart, right? So this is what contextual compute does. So your computational model needs to have participant relevance in it. Today, your LLM models treat you just like a bunch of data. There is no Peter in computation, right? So do we have
Right.
a model which so the computation model needs to have participants? Today we know the where, what, and how. The who is not there in the table at all, right? So it's like an
Yeah.
so once you build that, so you have uh, think of Pete. The context is again a memory today. Think of having Peter's LLM, just very randomly, I'm saying Peter's, and Ananta having an LLM. Then it kind of, our weights are different. Our neuroplasticity is different. Our context is different, right? So foundationally, you need to build a computational model, which we call as contextual compute, which has got participant in it. So you've got context as not an outcome of intelligence; it is intelligence, right? So today, context is kind of a generated outcome of intelligence now, and 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 unfortunately, that's not the way human brain works. Human brain works in a way where the context is intelligence, right? So I have this. There's a very divergent view. I have this thought that today intelligence is looked on at the outcome or the output of what an intelligent process did. But actually, your true intelligence is in the engagement, in the interaction in the process, right? So that's what you're saying. So how I met with you, how I spoke to you, wires your brain differently than what we did at the end, right? So today, the entire LLM model centers around output of an intelligent process, and And the reason is you don't have the agency for participant in computation. So when intelligence gets participant centric and natively context anchored, then which is what we do in contextual compute. I think what we build in MOI, you know this before, I have spoken this
Yeah.
before, right? So if you move state to a participant centric level, then you get rich context, not as an outcome, as part of the process. So you kind of say, okay, here is an, think of it like this, Peter. We all have cognition, but then that our cognition is not us. Your cognition, we all have brain, right? Your cognition is same,
Right.
my cognition is same, and I have the same memory. You and I went to that, uh, uh, went to the Yankee game, so we have the same memory, we had the same cognition, but we didn't have the same experience. Okay, so why? So they and so today's LLM models have cognition, and people are trying to add memory. Those two alone will not make intelligence. It has to introduce you. And that's what you're looking for in those kind of systems, right? So people have empathy, connectedness. So contextual
Yeah.
computer is kind of trying to do that. So,
Because it can't anticipate. It doesn't have enough context to really anticipate
correct.
what's going to work and not going to work.
And context is very participant centric. What I mean by that is it's very
Yeah.
different. Peter behaves very differently than I behave, right? So I was talking to somebody yesterday, right? You and I are having this conversation about, we are all having this conversation about intelligence. Now, this may have no bearing for somebody who is having a conversation in San Francisco at this point. So unfortunately, the way the LLM models work today is they have to connect both of them to figure something out. It's just that's not the way. So that's why you got a trillions of variables, because you're connecting unnecessary information based on output. Because both of us said intelligence. You said intelligence. I said intelligence. The person in San Francisco said intelligence. Let me connect all of them, right? But then our context is completely different. They might be talking about something
Yeah.
completely differently, and so it's not about memory or cognition. It's about participant and context and interactions. So and that's what at a very high level what we do in contextual compute, which kind of gives you the safety.
So again, we've had these conversations about making the user the center of that. And what attracted me to blockchain back 10 years ago was this concept of people owning and controlling and being able to have the option to monetize their own data. Because right now we're in a world where we're the product and all the big tech and commerce platforms are, they know everything about us. Netflix knows what I like to watch. Google knows where I'm browsing. My cell phone carrier knows my location all the time. My bank knows all my financial transactions. But if we could own and control our own data and put that on a blockchain so it's secure, it's immutable, then there's an opportunity to build AI agents that have enough context, I think, to make some of those connections beyond just a keyword or a semantic search.
Yeah. So I have this notion which I've been working on contextual compute called emerging participant intelligence, right? So every interaction gives you more data. So for that, you need to have stayed anchored to participant. Peter need to exist first. So every interaction Peter takes with me, right? With me, Vardhan, that gets anchored to Peter, not in an app, not in a platform, right? And then over time, then you will have your own emerging view of yourself, which an agent can take advantage of. You can have your context, right? So uh, uh, and for that, you need a participant anchored computational model, which is so whichever, think of like you logging apps and agents logging into you, then you logging into
Yeah.
them, right? So I think a mental model, right? So if you do that, then obviously the agents can talk to you. They have your context. You have agency. So you need to have agencies. What I'm saying now, unfortunately, we are a row in a table or in wallet in a smart contract. We don't have any independent existence. That's just the way the computation is built, right? So once we do that now, if you can have a model of you, then in different roles, of course, based on what you prefer, then agents can kind of work better, right? So just And so,
So
yeah,
the,
go
the
ahead.
engineer in me and the technical person in me is like, what's the right data structure for that? Is it these graph models
Yeah,
that have relationships and different dimensions across
yeah,
different
yeah.
attributes,
Mhm.
or and then how do you sort of store that? Um, inside a blockchain to
Yeah,
ensure the right permissions
yeah.
and security and access that the participants, the user, can turn on and off and decide who has access to this information about me.
Yeah, very interesting. So maybe we should have a follow-on call, Vardhan. But then at a very high level, it's what what we have is something called what we have created is like a multi-dimensional DAG, right? So you have it's not single-dimensional. So you have a dimension of relationship between you and the other. You grow as well as your relationship grows, right? It's two-dimensional. For example, I interact with you. That has to be maintained. Our relationship has to be maintained, and something triggers in me that also has to be maintained, right? So here
Okay.
in two dimensions is what the right data structure is. So just from an intelligence standpoint, the way today's LLM models work, Pete, is you got all these nodes which are supposed to represent neurons, and then you got links between those neurons which gives you the tensor weights which can sort of decide uh,
Okay.
whether I should connect A to B or A to C. What I mean by that is A to B has got better weight than A to C at a very high level. But the problem with that model is that's not how the human brain operates. The human brain operates in a very different way. Each neuron itself, the node itself, has got some intelligence. It's got some context. It's got some processing power, right? So these connections are only external. There is an internal processing that's going on, right? So in our model, that's why. So the node itself is one dimension, which is where you're growing, and then the relationship between you and the other node, which is another tensor weight. So your two dimensions of flexibility in there. So that's the kind of structure which which we're working on, which allows you to say, okay, you have different context nodes for you in the network, and each node about you when you interact with somebody else changes, right? So something changes in me, something changes in you. That's one link, and both of us talk together. That's another link, right? So we vertically grow and horizontally grow, if you want to think of it. So it's like
Okay.
it's like a graph, but then multi-linked composite graph. So think of it like a mesh structure. So
Okay. So speaking of then how things are architected, so we've
mm-hmm,
started with, machine learning and neural networks, and now they have
mm-hmm,
these transformer models, and
mm-hmm,
now they've just been able to throw a ton of compute,
yeah,
a ton of data at it, and
mm-hmm,
the results are amazing. And then
yeah,
they build these harnesses on top of it, so they can now plan, they can now research, they can start executing steps, and they can iterate to and verify.
mm-hmm.
Um, but is this model, like, as amazing as these things have gotten, do you think that this is truly intelligence, or is this still just pattern recognition at at a large scale? And to truly get to AGI, you need to do what people like Lon LeCun, one of the grandfathers of AI, who recently left Meta to form his own company, saying that no, we need to take a different approach
Yeah.
so that AI really has what he calls a worldview and understands the physical world as well, not just the data it's been, trained on.
Yeah, I kind of gave you the clue of what I think it is. So I'm in the second camp, right? It is definitely pattern recognition at this point, right? So just it's a and that's because I'm of the camp that if you don't have participant in context, so what is going to happen is uh, uh, so let me put it this way, right? The problem with AGI is the G. There is no general purpose intelligence. Okay, so the intelligence is extremely participant and context driven, and we all know this, right? It's just that two of your kids don't behave the same way given the exact same environment and exact given data,
I'm
right? So
sure
it
I'm not
just
the same as I was a week
yeah.
ago,
So the problem with AGI is that we can.
or
So
what I've
what?
been drinking that night.
Yeah. So I'll tell you. I'll give you the bad news, right? For example, we are going to get 80% correct, and the remaining 20% we are never going to get because that operates in a different dimension. So if you can go as fast as you want in one dimension, but then if the answer is in another dimension, you need to move to that dimension. So obviously today we have the uh, how dimension, which is all your data, right? So what we call as McHugh calls as worldview. So the real answer is in the participant relationship dimension, the last 20%, what you're talking about as real intelligence, where it and so you can add as much data as you want in one. You're not going to move to the other one, right? So it just is not going to happen geometrically. So the unfortunate part is you will see a maximum ability. The marginal utility is going to come down after a point because it's not going to get personalized. It's not going to do what you're going to be able to do. Not because it's not capable, not because the engineering is not good, because it doesn't have the dimension it needs to have in it, right? That's just by, and that's pretty obvious. So it'll get to a point. So, and the other thing that's pretty obvious for me when you think about this is, how many variables now? You have trillions of variables and megawatts of energies to produce a question.
Yeah, is this even sustainable,
Yeah,
this
so
approach?
your brain works in 20 watts, Pete. 20 watts
Right.
answers that question. So this that tells me that we are using a brute force method somewhere, right? So it is an you don't have to be in I don't know what the so I'm not saying it's not good, but will it truly produce intelligence in the current model? Unlikely, right? Because it's very internal looking. It's not external looking. As you rightly said, it cannot predict because it doesn't have the context. So it's a very recursive model, right? It's not an observational model. So it
Yeah.
can't extrapolate anything. It just so it's got a self-limiting timer. So what LLM did, and people generally get confused. LLM did not introduce a new intelligence paradigm. What it did was it allowed you great engineering ability to throw more capacity out of an existing neural network design. Okay. So it created
Okay.
a framework for you to build more. And yes, it's been great. And the unit economics is already showing, Pete, the amount of cost it takes to answer questions have become power that needs to take to answer questions have become exponentially high, right? It just uh, so I so it's like uh, what I think is the needle in the haystack problem. So you need the 70 variables to answer that question, but I need to know what are those 70 variables for that context for Pete. That's the problem. The problem is not hey, here are some trillion variables, uh,
Great. Yeah, the
and
brute
so
force method.
the brute force method. So that's just my view. So we are working on this idea of contextual compute, participant centricity, emerging intelligence, and eventually what I
So
call as participant superintelligence. So that's that.
So where does that model fit in to the existing LLM model versus this new maybe worldview and
Mhm.
physical worldview approach that Juan LeCun is talking about,
Yeah,
and even further advancements in things like quantum computing? Where,
yeah.
where do you sort of feel, as you're navigating these landmines and where you think the technology and industry is going, where you're going to fit with that?
Yeah, so I think uh, our approach, I think too short a call to have that long conversation, but so there are three aspects, right? I'll just give a very brief answer, and one is I think intelligence is in the process, not in the outcome. That's the first definition that I have. So you can't separate participant and interaction away from outcome and try to produce intelligence. That's just the first thesis. And based on that,
Okay.
we have this model of uh, anything in computation needs to be anchored to the participant. So obviously, if you do that, right, then what happens is anything which emerges is going to be intelligent and be relevant to you. So you don't have to force, right? I've told you this before, enable, not control. So we're now trying to be in the mode of LLM, the word of trying to control the outcome. So I think our model is enable the outcome, enable the participant and interaction and context to you all. So intelligence emerges from that. And then once it emerges from that, right, for example, you have multiple roles. We call it as context inheritance. You have the role of a father, you have the role of a guitarist, you have the role of a student, you have the role of a friend. So each context produces its own intelligence. And then after that, we build a synapse. So that's like, think of it like nodes in an LLM
Okay.
structure, right? And over time, then we build the synaptic structures to connect your own context to create a super intelligence of you. So that kind of becomes your your LLM. Not, LLM is a bad word, but then it gives you an intelligent version of Peter. An intelligent version of Peter emerges, and so that model will answer Peter's questions well, but that model will not add Vardhan's questions well. So Vardhan has to be, and that's the worldview that we're building towards, right? So, and
That's a pretty solid use case, AK. I have been loving the past 30 minutes, to be very honest. You guys have been talking
so
like
we got carried away. So,
the analogies you guys have been using has been like crazy. But I have a question for you, Peter. Like, you have built and been part of some very strong communities in this space. What do you think most people misunderstand about building real communities versus just building an audience today?
Um, yeah, building community, I think, and building a network is more important than ever. It's more important than the skills you have, because as we said, AI is going to erode the value of those skills, and the value is going to zero. Um, the loyalty of your employer. Um, so many companies are just firing people, because they phased out of middle management, or now AI can replace them, or we just overhired over the pandemic. So I don't think you can count on loyalty from your employer anymore. So I think it's super important for everyone to be part of a community. Um, and there was an interesting thing on net was it Netflix the other day? I feel like I'd heard of it, but um, about this guy who wrote this book called Bowling Alone or something like that. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. Um, or something bowling related. And it was this Harvard professor who wrote this book, and saying that the importance of community, like part of the reason that he says we have this great divide in the United States, is because of the fact that we don't belong to communities, and people are more isolated. They don't really talk to their neighbors. They're not part of a church group. They're not part of a bowling league. Um, and so he sort of makes the premise that that is such an important part of the structure for us as humans. So I totally believe with that, and I've gotten tremendous value from the different communities that I've been a part of. I've been an active member of sort of the New Jersey tech ecosystem through all the different meetup groups that I've been part of. Um, I've enjoyed being part of Crypto Mondays and the Founder Institute, and the friendships and the people I've met through there have just been amazing. So yeah, my recommendation, like, hey, even if you're not into AI and tech and don't want to join a tech meetup, go join a bowling league, go join a church group. I get tremendous, like, aside from the fun of playing music, I really get great camaraderie from being part of Lake House Music and being part of that community of musicians. I find is really fun and terrific. So, hey, everyone should be, if you're not, like, go out and join a community or go start one. Um, and then I need to pause for a
Absolutely.
sec because my kids are here. One sec.
Yeah, no worries.
So hey, I think it's just an important part of humanity to be part of these communities. But secondly, it's part of your economic survival right now. um, because I don't know if you've ever tried applying to a job on any of these job boards, but like they got like a million, applications going, and it's, the AI resume and cover letter you wrote versus the AI bot that's checking it. The best way to, find work, find your next client, find your next employee that you want to work with is through the personal relationships that you have and through the communities that you're part of. So your professional network, your brand, is, and your community is the best way to find employment and financial security in this world right now.
Absolutely. As much as we are moving to a more autonomous world, as much as it's important to be in a community, build real relationships, because that's something that's gonna steer us through this era of AI. That's what I believe as well. But yeah, that's a good point. That takes me to the last question for this podcast. I know it's been a pretty long podcast, but I have enjoyed it personally because I have been hearing you
It flew
guys.
by, and it flew by in 2 minutes.
Exactly. But this last question is for both of you. I would love to hear your thoughts on this question. If we sit here together again 5 years from now, what do you think the world gets right or wrong about integrating AI into the society?
My biggest concern, and we touched upon it a little, is not having the right checks and balances in place for AI and just saying, hey, let it just recurse on itself and build itself out, um, where it's not tied to certain goals and outcomes. And that I see there's real danger in it saying, oh, I know how to outsmart the humans and tell them what they want while I go and do my own, have my own agenda here. Um, and I think there's huge danger there. And my bigger concerns is the use of AI for military operations and the mass destruction that can cause. I know there's been a lot of talk lately about Anthropic being, blacklisted as a supplier by the U.S. because they weren't going to just like, hey, we're not going to turn off all the safeguards and say, hey, AI can make the decisions on who to kill or who not to kill. Um, so I think there's some big moral issues to grasp and huge safety issues to grasp as far as that. Um, and it's hard because the genie's out of the bottle and people are just in this race to make it better, and saying, oh, you can't win, you can't fall behind your competitors. But, I look at just what happened with Mythos, of Anthropic saying we can't release this to the general public because, they'll hack the operating systems and the cybersecurity around the world. So we're gonna give those companies a head start to fix these problems that Mythos uncovers. Well, they're acting on a positive way, but there's probably plenty of models out there that are not that far behind that will not act in people's best interest. So I have real concerns about that. But that said, on the negative side, on the positive side, I think this is going to open up a world of opportunity for, as someone who loves designing and building software, for all kinds of people to just design and build, anything they want. Um, I look forward to seeing what my kids build, who are just like 10 and 11, what educators build, what marketers build. I think we're going to enter this age of personalized software that's just going to explode. And I'm really excited to see what people build.
Very interesting, Pete. Very interesting. So, Vedant, my take is uh, just don't misunderstand AI. At the end of the day, moral judgments have to be made by somebody who can take accountability for it. The
Mm,
whole world lives on just that one paradigm, okay? Right? So, uh, don't make so you got to have the agency at the right place, and that goes back to the heart of what we tried doing anyway, right? If you don't do that, so if you misunderstand AI, AI is a great tool. It'll know a lot of, but then it won't have agency, right? How much ever you try. AGI is not about human ability, is not about our ability to process. Human beings' ability is the ability to take responsibility and accountability. AI can never
mhm.
do that, right? So it's just and so so this whole AGI debate itself is moot at that point, right? So it's a bunch of huge capabilities. It's intelligent, and uh, if it does a mistake, who's accountable for it? So that it's a foundational question, right? So our agency is so once you understand that, then you need to have the right guardrails. Who's a and and the and so that's one thing that I look for. Whether we mistook AI to be something more of what it is not, right? If we understand it the right way, then I think we'd have put the right guardrails. The second one, which is probably a little bit in a lower level, is in the next level of problem is this may make the separation between the have and have-nots very big. If you thought information centralization was bad, wait till intelligence gets centralized. Okay, it's a huge problem, right? So the whole world is now controlled by 4 people, and that's where it's getting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's just, I'm not saying people are bad. That's not the intent is. But then if a chip maker and 3 companies can make all the decisions in the world, think of it as good. If you thought the search engine company was bad, wait till. That's a huge. So you're outsourcing your whole intelligence to. Because intelligence happens at the edges, it's truly distributed, it is truly personalized. So are we going to recognize and respect that while we build this whole capability? And that goes back to where agency is. Where do you want to put? So if you participant anchor it, the agency sits at the right place. If you anchor it to the system, it happens at the wrong place, right? So I think. That's the second large problem. So I would, if 5 years from now we have 3 companies managing all of it and the chips, I think we are heading the wrong way. So because, and so I hope that we don't outsource our intelligence. We understand what AI can do, right? So understand where intelligence is about where agency sits, not about where capability is, right? So people who can take. And once you understand that, you put the right guardrails and whether you provided an equal participation for everybody in this moment. So those are the 3 things I would measure.
So I wonder whether we're going to move away, sort of like the way we went from mainframes to personal computers came out. If we'll see the similar to that, where like the centralized models are like the mainframes, and we're going to move to
absolutely
Mac Minis running open source models that are trained, and all our data stays local.
That's the only viable model
on us.
Yeah, intelligence is always on the edges, right? When you and I had this conversation, we had some intelligence created here now. This is not central. This is in every interaction on the edge, right? So I think that's the only scalable model, cost effectively and economically and safely. But then whether we will get there is a very interesting question. So because the question is bootstrap, right? Everybody says that we can't do that because we don't have the data to bootstrap. That's always the answer, right? So I can build a model to the edge, but then the question is, what will you train it on? So the bootstrap question. So are you going to take the effort of, okay, if I'm going to suck it through for the first 2 years and build it on the edges and bootstrap this into the and so it's never about the model, it's the data which goes into the model, right? You know this. So I think and the more we already outsource quite a bit of it, but then so the risk with that is then people with AI will become extremely wealthy and rich and resource maximized.
Yeah, I have a similar concern.
Yeah, and that's a huge social...
huge centralization of power.
Correct. I think that's...
Power, money, influence.
So, but then the counterintuitive thing is maximum change may happen in place where there is maximum affluence because AI can penetrate there. For example, in places where there is no electricity, AI is not getting there. So people are still working with hands. So I think so skill is probably a natural barrier. So it's an interesting paradigm. But then, so my question is, you can ask, we can do this today, right? You can go ask AI 2 questions, the same question 2 different ways, it'll agree to both of it. That's not how real intelligence operates, Pete. Real intelligence is all about agency and accountability. It's not about opinions, right? So it's just not about facts-based data. So you can ask, you can ask, it's all about judgment, as you rightly said, right? It's not about, we can ask 2 questions. It'll give the same question, it'll give you 2 different ways and it'll agree with you on both.
Right.
and
Ask two different models, you get two different answers. And
yeah,
ask the
so
same model, the same question,
yeah, it'll
day
give you,
later.
yeah, and it's not wrong because it does not have the ability to discriminate. It has the ability to process,
Hmm.
and that difference
I like
is,
that distinction.
yeah, and that's in that difference is not linear. That difference is dimensional. That's what I'm saying. So you can't make that difference based on adding more data.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate truth, right? So, and you discriminate based on your context. So if you, I'll end this with this, and I think it's a long long podcast, but then so if you go to the thought experiment, so if you have identical twins, you both of them grow in the same household, same experiences, and then after 20 years, do they make the same decisions when they meet externally? No. They have the same data because the context was very different. The way the relationships were processed were very different. And you can't brush this aside and say, no, this is this is how the human beings. So it's not in the data. It's in a dimension of participant and context, and that's the way true intelligence operates. So and so until we solve that problem, we will still have to worry about not making judgment, but then the larger question is, even if it makes judgment, who's accountable for it? So if I today buy an AI, if I buy an AI model and the model does something wrong, am I accountable? Or the model accountable? Or the owner of the model accountable? I don't know. These are very hard questions, right? So it's just, I don't think we have scratched the surface of those questions.
Yep. It creates a lot of legal and liability issues.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think.
And I know we went over, but you said at the beginning, hey, we need to do this more often. Well, now you have enough content maybe for 2 to 3 episodes. And you can split this into a 2 or 3 part series.
Yeah. It was nice. It's nice catching up with you, Peter.
Yeah. Great catching up. Brilliant. And we'll get together soon. Next Wednesday, I was... James Baroud has this Innovate 100 thing, and I was nominated to be part of that as part of the New Jersey ecosystem. So I'll send you an invite, but you should definitely come if you can make it to New Brunswick next Wednesday on the 13th. I joke around with James. I said, "What, you added a new category for best hair in the startup ecosystem?" And but yeah, so it should be a nice event. I'll send you an invite if you're gonna. Are you gonna be around in New Jersey next weekend?
Yeah, I am. Send it to me.
Okay,
I'll take a look at it. Yeah,
cool. I'll send you the link if you can make it. Great.
All right. Thank you, Vardhan.
All right. Other than that, we'll pick another time to get together soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was an incredible conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter, for joining us and sharing your perspective. This is so much value for everybody watching. Me being a host can extract a lot of value from this 1 hour 30 minutes podcast, and I believe everyone who will be watching this will have a lot to process and a lot for in it for them. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, AK, for hosting this with me. And more episodes coming soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Anantha. Thank you, Vardhan. Thank you, everyone who attended and watched today. Thanks. Bye.